What would you do if the man who humiliated you in front of everyone and fired you for refusing his advances became your employee 5 years later? Sophia Zhang was a talented architect working at Sterling Corporation when the cold and arrogant CEO Ethan Sterling called her to his office one night and made her an offer that destroyed her career. He wanted her to become his mistress in exchange for the promotion she had earned through years of hard work and sleepless nights. When she refused and slapped him for his audacity, he fired her immediately and blacklisted her from every major firm in the city using his connections and power to ensure she would never work in architecture again. Sophia left the city broken and humiliated with nothing but her talent and a burning desire to prove him wrong. 5 years later, she returned as the CEO of Zhang International, the biggest architecture firm in Asia, and Sterling Corporation was on the verge of bankruptcy, desperately needing her help to survive. Now Ethan Sterling, the man who once held all the power, stood in her office begging for a contract, while she sat behind the desk holding his company's fate in her hands. This is the story of how the woman he tried to break became the boss he now had to answer to. Sophia stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror of her tiny apartment and barely recognized the woman looking back at her. Dark circles shadowed her eyes from another sleepless night spent working on the Morrison project presentation that would determine whether she finally got the promotion to senior architect at Sterling Corporation. She had poured 3 years of her life into this company, sacrificing relationships and personal time to prove she belonged among the best architects in the industry. Today was supposed to be her day, and nothing would stop her from showing everyone, including the cold CEO Ethan Sterling, that she deserved this position. She grabbed her portfolio and headed to the office, arriving an hour early as she always did, because preparation was everything in a company where one mistake could end your career. The Sterling Corporation building rose 60 floors into the sky, all glass and steel and ruthless ambition, much like its owner, who had built this empire at age 30 through brilliant business decisions and an absolute intolerance for weakness or failure. Sophia settled into her cubicle and reviewed her presentation one final time when her colleague Jennifer rushed over with a strange expression mixing pity and concern. Jennifer leaned in close and whispered that she had heard something disturbing from the executive floor, but Sophia should take it with caution because rumors in this building spread faster than facts. The promotion that everyone assumed Sophia would receive had apparently already been decided, and the name being mentioned was David Chen, who had joined the company only 8 months ago and spent more time schmoozing with executives than actually designing buildings. Sophia felt her stomach drop but forced herself to stay calm because she had worked too hard to let office gossip shake her confidence right before the most important presentation of her career. She thanked Jennifer and tried to focus, but her hands trembled slightly as she gathered her materials, because somewhere deep inside she knew that in a company run by men like Ethan Sterling, hard work often mattered less than connections and the willingness to play politics. The presentation went flawlessly, with the clients praising her innovative design and the executive team nodding in approval. But Sophia noticed that Ethan Sterling, who sat at the head of the table, barely looked at her work and seemed more interested in checking his phone than acknowledging her 3 years of dedication to this project. After the meeting ended, Sophia returned to her desk feeling hollow, despite the client's enthusiasm, because she had seen this pattern before where her work was praised, but the credit somehow flowed upward to men who contributed far less. 2 hours later, her phone rang with a message from the CEO's office requesting her presence immediately, and Sophia's heart raced with hope that maybe she had been wrong, and this was finally the moment she would receive the recognition she deserved. She straightened her blazer and took the elevator to the 60th floor, where the executive suites existed in a different world of marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. Ethan Sterling's assistant, a cold woman named Margaret, barely acknowledged Sophia before gesturing toward the massive oak doors and telling her that Mr. Sterling was expecting her inside. Sophia knocked once and entered the office that was larger than her entire apartment, with walls lined with awards and photographs of Ethan Sterling, with politicians and celebrities. He stood by the window with his back to her, dressed in an impeccable charcoal suit, with his hands in his pockets, radiating the kind of casual power that came from never being told no. He turned slowly, and Sophia was struck again by how unfairly handsome he was, with sharp features and cold gray eyes that seemed to calculate the value of everything and everyone they observed. Ethan Sterling, at 32, was considered one of the most eligible bachelors in the city, but his reputation for being ruthless and emotionally detached kept most women at a distance despite his wealth and status. He gestured for Sophia to sit, but remained standing himself, which immediately put her at a disadvantage, as she looked up at him from the leather chair that seemed designed to make visitors feel small. He began speaking in that smooth voice that never betrayed any real emotion, telling her that her work on the Morrison project had been impressive, and that the client specifically requested her involvement in future developments. Sophia felt a flutter of hope, but something in his tone made her wary, because compliments from Ethan Sterling always came with conditions attached, like contracts written in invisible ink. He walked around his desk and leaned against it, crossing his arms and studying her in a way that made her skin prickle with discomfort, because this was not how a CEO looked at an employee discussing a promotion. Then he said something that made her blood run cold in that same casual tone he might use to discuss the weather. He told her that he had been watching her for quite some time, and noticed not just her architectural talent, but also her dedication and the way she carried herself with quiet confidence that he found rather appealing. Sophia's hands gripped the armrests of her chair as she realized with growing horror where this conversation was heading, and every instinct screamed at her to leave immediately. Ethan continued speaking as if he was offering her a tremendous opportunity, explaining that he was a man with particular needs and desires that required discretion, and he believed Sophia could fulfill those needs while advancing her career in ways that mere promotions could never achieve. He stated plainly that if she agreed to become his mistress and provide him with companionship and intimacy, on his terms he would make her the youngest senior architect in company history and ensure her projects received priority and unlimited budgets. The office felt suffocating as Sophia processed what he was actually proposing, and the casual way he presented it, as if her body and dignity were just another business transaction to be negotiated and finalized. Sophia stood up slowly, and her voice shook, not with fear but with rage, as she told him exactly what she thought of his disgusting offer, and the kind of man who would use his position to proposition employees who had earned their success through actual work. She said that she had spent 3 years proving her worth through talent and dedication, and she would rather leave this company than compromise herself for a man who clearly saw women as objects to be acquired rather than professionals to be respected. Ethan Sterling's expression shifted from mild surprise to cold fury, because apparently no one had ever rejected him before, let alone with such vehemence, and he was not accustomed to being challenged, especially by someone he considered beneath him in status and power. His voice dropped to a dangerous tone as he told her that she was making a terrible mistake, and that he had extended her an opportunity that dozens of women would eagerly accept if they had any ambition or intelligence. Sophia felt something snap inside her, and before she could stop herself, her hand connected with his face in a slap that echoed through the massive office like a gunshot. The red mark bloomed across his cheek, and Ethan Sterling touched it slowly, as if he could not quite believe what had just happened, while Sophia stood there breathing hard and knowing she had just destroyed her entire career. He smiled then, but it was the coldest smile she had ever seen, devoid of any humor or humanity, as he told her very quietly that she would regret this moment for the rest of her life. He picked up his phone and called security, telling them to escort Miss Zhang from the building immediately, and to ensure she collected none of her personal belongings, because she was terminated effective immediately for insubordination and assault. Sophia wanted to defend herself and explain what he had done, but she knew no one would believe her word against his. And in companies like Sterling Corporation, the CEO was always right by default. As the elevator descended, Sophia felt tears burning her eyes but refused to let them fall because she would not give Ethan Sterling the satisfaction of knowing he had broken her, even as she realized her entire career in this city was likely over. She was right because within days she discovered that Ethan Sterling had used his extensive network to blacklist her from every major architecture firm, making sure that no one would hire the woman who had dared to reject and strike him. Months passed with Sophia applying to countless positions and receiving rejection after rejection, even from small firms that should have been desperate for someone with her talent and experience. Bills piled up and her savings evaporated while friends slowly stopped returning her calls because associating with someone blacklisted by Ethan Sterling was considered career suicide in their industry. 6 months after her termination, Sophia sat in her apartment that she could no longer afford and stared at the eviction notice knowing she had two choices. That night, she made a decision that would change everything and began researching international markets where Ethan Sterling's influence did not reach. Using the last of her savings and money borrowed from her retired parents who believed in her, even when no one else did, Sophia bought a one-way ticket to Shanghai with nothing but her portfolio and a plan that most people would consider insane. The first year in Shanghai was brutal, with Sophia working 18-hour days taking any small project she could find from residential renovations to small commercial spaces that established firms considered beneath them. She lived in a tiny apartment barely bigger than a closet and survived on instant noodles while learning Mandarin and building relationships with local contractors and suppliers who appreciated her work ethic and integrity. Her designs began attracting attention because she brought a fresh perspective that blended Western innovation with respect for Eastern aesthetics, creating buildings that felt both modern and culturally grounded. By the second year, she had hired 3 employees and secured her first major project, designing a boutique hotel that would become one of the most photographed buildings in Shanghai. The hotel's success brought more clients, and Sophia reinvested every dollar into growing her firm, which she named Zhang International, as both a tribute to her heritage and a declaration that she was building something global and unstoppable. Year 3 brought partnerships with major developers, and Year 4 saw Zhang International expanding to Singapore and Tokyo, with Sophia's reputation growing as one of the most innovative architects in Asia. By Year 5, Zhang International had become the largest architecture firm in Asia, with over 200 employees. Sophia had transformed from a blacklisted architect into a CEO who appeared on magazine covers and gave keynote speeches at international conferences. She had cut her hair shorter in a sharp bob that framed her face perfectly, and wore tailored power suits that cost more than her entire wardrobe from her Sterling Corporation days. But despite all her success and wealth, Sophia never forgot the humiliation she had endured, or the man who had tried to destroy her for refusing to compromise her dignity. She followed Sterling Corporation's trajectory from afar and noted with satisfaction that the company was struggling after several failed projects and the loss of major clients to more innovative competitors. Then one morning, her assistant brought news that made Sophia's coffee taste sweeter than it ever had before. Sterling Corporation was on the verge of bankruptcy and desperately seeking partnerships with international firms, and they had specifically requested a meeting with Zhang International because Sophia's company was their only hope for survival. Sophia sat in her corner office on the 45th floor of her own building, overlooking Shanghai's financial district, and smiled because fate had given her something better than revenge. She had the opportunity to show Ethan Sterling exactly what he had lost when he tried to reduce her to an object, rather than recognize her as the brilliant architect she had always been. She approved the meeting and had her team prepare detailed terms for a potential partnership that would essentially make Sterling Corporation a subsidiary of Zhang International. 2 weeks later, Ethan Sterling arrived in Shanghai, and Sophia watched from her office window as his car pulled up looking far less impressive than she remembered. Her assistant announced his arrival, and Sophia took a moment to compose herself, smoothing her burgundy suit and touching the diamond necklace she had bought herself. as a reminder of how far she had come through her own merit. She told her assistant to make him wait exactly 15 minutes, because powerful people always made others wait. He did not stand or offer her hand. He clearly recognized her immediately, because his confident stride faltered for just a moment before he recovered his composure and sat down without being invited. Sophia let the silence stretch uncomfortably long while she reviewed papers on her desk as if he was just another minor appointment in her very busy schedule. She asked him to explain why Sterling Corporation believed Zhang International should waste resources saving a company that had clearly been mismanaged and lost its competitive edge in the market. But Sophia noticed his hands gripped the armrest slightly too tight, revealing the desperation he tried to hide behind corporate jargon. Sophia listened without expression, and then asked him a question that made the color drain from his face. The room temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees, as Ethan realized she had not forgotten anything, and this meeting was not going to be the simple business negotiation he had expected. He started to speak, but Sophia held up one hand, stopping him because she was not finished. She said she had spent 5 years building something he tried to take from her. Ethan Sterling, who had never apologized for anything in his entitled life, looked at her and seemed to struggle with words that did not come naturally to men who had always held all the power. He said quietly that he had been wrong and that his behavior 5 years ago was inexcusable, and he had let his position and ego blind him to basic decency and respect. He admitted that losing his company was perhaps punishment he deserved, but hundreds of employees who had done nothing wrong would lose their jobs if Sterling Corporation collapsed. Sophia leaned back in her chair and studied him, wondering if this was genuine remorse or just another manipulation from a man who had made a career of getting what he wanted through whatever means necessary. She told him that she would consider a partnership, but on her terms and her terms alone. Sterling Corporation would become a subsidiary of Zhang International, with her maintaining 60% controlling interest. Ethan would remain as managing director but report directly to her, and every major decision would require her approval. All projects would be rebranded under Zhang International, and the Sterling name would be phased out within 2 years. Most importantly, there would be a clause in the contract stating that any harassment or inappropriate behavior toward employees would result in immediate termination without severance. Ethan listened to these terms that essentially stripped him of everything he had built and the pride that had defined him for 32 years. Sophia expected him to rage or storm out, but instead he simply asked what would happen to the employees if he refused these terms. She told him honestly that she would let Sterling Corporation collapse and hire the talented employees herself, while letting the company as assets be sold at auction. She had no obligation to save him, but she would protect the people who depended on him, because unlike him, she understood that companies were built by people, not egos. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, and then he did something that shocked her more than anything else could have. He stood up and extended his hand, asking if they could start over, not as CEO and former employee, but as partners who both understood what it meant to build something from nothing. Sophia looked at his outstretched hand, remembering the last time she had been in his office when he had offered her something degrading instead of something genuine. She stood as well and shook his hand firmly, because she was not accepting his partnership out of forgiveness, but out of the knowledge that she had won completely and totally. The contract was signed 3 days later, and news spread through the industry that Ethan Sterling, the arrogant CEO who had ruled his empire with an iron fist, now answered to Sophia Zhang, the woman he had once fired and tried to destroy. The first 6 months of the partnership were tense, with Ethan clearly struggling to adjust to being supervised after years of absolute authority. But Sophia noticed something unexpected during their weekly meetings when they reviewed projects and strategy. Ethan listened to her ideas and implemented her suggestions without the ego that had previously defined his decision-making. He worked longer hours than anyone else in the company, as if trying to prove he deserved to still be there. During one late-night meeting when they were the only two left in the office reviewing designs for a major Singapore project, Ethan looked at her and said something that felt genuine for perhaps the first time. He told her that watching her lead Zhang International had taught him more about real leadership than all his years of arrogant certainty. He said she had built something based on merit and respect, while he had built something based on fear and control, and her way had proven far more sustainable and successful. Sophia did not know how to respond because she had expected to hate him forever and use this partnership as extended revenge. But instead, she found herself seeing a different person. This Ethan Sterling, who admitted failures and worked to earn respect rather than demand, it was someone she had not known existed beneath the arrogance. Months turned into a year, and Zhang International, under the combined leadership of Sophia's innovation and Ethan's reformed business acumen, began dominating markets even more aggressively. But something else was growing between them that neither had planned or wanted. Working closely revealed qualities they had not seen before, with Sophia discovering that Ethan's coldness had been armor, protecting vulnerabilities he never showed anyone. Ethan saw that Sophia's strength came not from bitterness, but from genuine belief that people deserve to be treated with dignity, regardless of their position. During a business trip to Tokyo when a project was nearly derailed by contractor disputes, Ethan watched Sophia negotiate with patience and respect that won over everyone in the room. After the meeting, he told her that 5 years ago he had tried to buy her body because he was too stupid to recognize her mind and heart were worth infinitely more. He said he understood if she could never forgive him, but he wanted her to know that meeting her had fundamentally changed who he was as a person and leader. Sophia felt something crack in the armor she had worn since that terrible day in his office. She told him that forgiveness was not something she gave easily, and he would have to earn it through actions, not words. Over the following months, Ethan proved himself through consistent behavior, treating every employee with respect and implementing policies that protected workers from harassment and discrimination. He publicly credited Sophia in interviews and redirected praise for company success to the teams who did the actual work. Sophia found herself looking forward to their meetings and conversations that had evolved from purely business into discussions about architecture and philosophy and dreams they had set aside while chasing success. One evening, while reviewing designs for what would become the tallest building in Shanghai, Ethan asked her something that had clearly been weighing on him. He asked if she ever wondered what might have happened if he had handled their first meeting differently, and offered her the respect and partnership she deserved from the beginning. Sophia was quiet because she had wondered the same thing, but was afraid to admit that somewhere along the way, her hatred had transformed into something uncomfortably close to understanding, and perhaps even attraction to the man he had become. She told him that dwelling on what could have been was pointless, because who they were now had been forged by the choices they made, both good and terrible. Ethan moved closer, and the air between them felt charged with years of history and hurt and healing. He told her that he had fallen in love with her somewhere between signing the partnership contract and watching her change the industry through sheer brilliance and integrity. He said he knew he had no right to feel this way after what he had done, but he could not help it any more than he could change the past. Sophia's heart raced because she had been fighting the same feelings and denying them even to herself, because loving the man who had once tried to destroy her felt like betraying everything she had fought for. But the man standing before her now was not the same arrogant CEO who had propositioned her in that office. This man had been humbled and transformed by consequences and her example. She asked him what he expected her to say because she could not simply erase 5 years of pain with feelings that terrified her. Ethan said he expected nothing and would accept whatever boundaries she needed, but wanted her to know the truth because he was tired of hiding behind pride and corporate masks. Sophia realized that vulnerability was harder for him than any business negotiation, and that admission took more courage than most people possessed. She told him that she did not know if she could love someone who had hurt her so deeply, but she was willing to see if the man he had become was worth taking that risk. They agreed to move slowly with boundaries clearly established, because mixing business and personal feelings was dangerous, and they both had too much to lose. What started as professional dinners evolved into personal conversations and tentative trust. 6 months into this new phase, Ethan showed Sophia something he had never shared with anyone. He took her to a small architecture museum and showed her sketches he had drawn as a teenager before business school, and family expectations convinced him to pursue profit over passion. The drawings were beautiful, and she realized that beneath the corporate armor had been someone who understood what she loved about creating spaces that inspired people. She shared her own dreams that had nothing to do with money or success, including her desire to design low-income housing that proved beautiful architecture should not be reserved only for the wealthy. They began working on that project together, using Zhang International's resources to create affordable housing that respected the dignity and dreams of people who society often overlooked. 2 years after their partnership began, and 1 year after they cautiously started building something personal, Sterling Corporation had been fully integrated into Zhang International, and the company had become the largest architecture firm in the world. Sophia stood on the rooftop of their newest building in Shanghai, at a company celebration with Ethan beside her, watching the sun set over a skyline they had helped create. He took her hand carefully because even now he never assumed permission, and asked her if she remembered what he had offered her 5 years ago. Sophia tensed, waiting for pain, but Ethan's expression held only regret and hope. He said he had offered her something degrading and transactional because he had been incapable of recognizing real value. Now he wanted to offer her something different, not a proposition but a promise. He pulled out a ring that was beautiful, but not ostentatious, and told her that he wanted to spend the rest of his life earning her trust and building something together based on equality and respect. He said she had taught him that real power came from lifting others up, rather than holding them down, and he wanted the privilege of standing beside her as an equal partner in all things. Sophia looked at this man, who had been her destroyer, and was now offering to be her partner in ways that actually honored who she was. She thought about the girl who had left his office humiliated and broken 5 years ago, and the woman she had become through determination and rage transformed into purpose. She thought about whether people truly changed, or just became better at hiding their worst qualities. But she also thought about the past 2 years watching Ethan actively work to become someone worthy of second chances, and the way he had supported her dreams even when they cost him pride and profit. She told him that she would marry him, but on one condition. He had to understand that she would never be the woman in the background supporting his career, but rather his equal in all decisions and endeavors. Ethan smiled and said he would not want her any other way, because watching her lead had taught him that true partnership meant celebrating each other is strength rather than fearing it. They married 6 months later in a ceremony that reflected both their cultures and values. With vows they wrote themselves, promising honesty and respect, and the courage to call each other out when old patterns threatened new growth. Years later, when Zhang International had offices on 6 continents, and Sophia had been named one of the most influential people in global architecture, she sometimes thought about how pain could become purpose, and how the worst moments could lead to the most unexpected destinations. She never forgot what Ethan had done, or the woman she had been forced to become because of his arrogance. But she also recognized that both of them had been transformed by consequences and choices. She had learned that strength was not about never being broken, but about deciding how to rebuild yourself when someone tried to destroy you. Ethan had learned that real power was not about control, but about earning respect through consistent integrity. Together they had built something that was greater than either could have achieved alone. Not because the past did not matter, but because they had both been willing to face it honestly and grow beyond who they used to be. Their story became legend in the industry not as a romance, but as a testament to the fact that sometimes the person who tried to break you could become your greatest partner, if they were willing to do the hard work of becoming someone worthy of that partnership, and you were brave enough to risk believing in transformation. The woman who had once been fired for refusing to compromise her dignity had become the CEO everyone wanted to work for, not through revenge, but through building something based on merit and respect. The man who had once believed power meant taking whatever he wanted had learned that true strength came from earning trust and lifting others up. And together they proved that while first impressions and first mistakes could be devastating, they did not have to be the final chapter if both people were willing to write something better. Sophia Zhang had walked into Ethan Sterling's office twice. The first time she left humiliated and destroyed. The second time she left as his boss, his equal, and eventually his partner in ways that honored everything she had fought to become. That was not a story of forgiveness coming easily, but of justice earned and growth chosen. And sometimes that was the most powerful kind of love. The kind built not on initial attraction or easy chemistry, but on the foundation of two people who had seen each other at their worst and chosen to build something better together.